We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast. This is Abe Williams, your host. We have Horace the Kitten as my co-host. Sammy's asleep right now. Honestly, man, I'm probably going to be riding solo for a while. Just because where I work like 60 hours, it's like 50. Well, it's scheduled 40, but I end up working on my day off, but we've been staying late just about every night, so it's like around 55, 60 hours, man. It's crazy. Which I'm not complaining, because I've been volunteering for it on days off, you know. Just trying to stack chips, make that money, you know how it is. I wanted to, I like to start the episode with kind of a update on how I'm doing. I told you all the past, I think 2 episodes, me and Sammy were kind of figuring out what we wanted to do for my birthday. And we finally decided, so tomorrow when I get off work, which knock on wood, hopefully should be 6 a.m., we will be leaving Kentucky to go to Ohio. It's about a 3-hour drive. We are going to Point Pleasant. Or it might be Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I think it's on the Ohio River, honestly, but it's 3 hours away from here. And we're going to go check out, basically, Point Pleasant, which is like where the Silver Bridge fell, Mothman sightings, like that's where the whole story comes from. There's a museum there. There's a memorial there for all the victims on the Silver Bridge. We're going to go to the museum and hopefully find out the location of the radioactive site where Mothman, that's supposedly like his lair back in the 60s. So yeah, it'll be fun. They got like a little cafe. They make Mothman donuts. There's a big Mothman statue in the square. So I don't know. I don't really do much, you know, like Sammy, since I've gotten, you know, been with her, man, she's treated me well, like my past 2 birthdays, you know. One of my birthdays, she took me to a Yellow Wolf concert. Another one, she took me to a Doyle concert. Like, she takes care of me, man, which is awesome. My first wife, man, she didn't do shit. She didn't care, but Sammy's a good woman. I got lucky, you know. But let me roll out where you can find us. I don't know where you're listening to us from, but you can find us on YouTube. The main channel name is Abe Williams. The profile picture is a dream catcher. You can find us on Breaker. You can find us on Google Podcast. You can find us on Radio Public. You can find us on Spotify, and you can find us on BitChute. So, check us out wherever is easiest for you. If you do find us on YouTube, even if you don't even use YouTube, you can always just log in, you know, subscribe to the channel, and you don't even have to hit the bell. That subscription matters no matter what. but I appreciate it either way. If you are on YouTube and you like this podcast and you like to listen to us, if you would like to give us a couple pennies here and there, we don't get paid a lot. I don't do it for the money. But if you do, check out any of those other alternative sites that I just mentioned. And that way, if you like to listen to us, if you would like to put a couple, a nickel in our pocket, you can, because that's all I'm getting paid for each episode is like a nickel an episode, So if you want to, well, actually less than that, but if you want to, give us a nickel here and there, it adds up, Maybe one day I can buy a cheeseburger or another microphone. We got one microphone right now, and we're trying to save up for another, so but that's about it. I have actually, my brother is doing a contest right now. Pardon. That's why you don't smoke, kids. My brother is doing a contest right now. His basically his artist name is .orbix. So I always put him in the credits, or I try to always remember to put him in the credits on each one of the podcast episodes. But it's .orbix, ORBIX. It's all lowercase. But he does the theme song for the intro and outro of this podcast. So check out his actual channel on YouTube. He also has another channel, Mechanical Digestion, which I'm not going to spell it out because I suck at spelling. But Mechanical Digestion. So go ahead, and if you're a fan of me, you can hook my brother up, and sub to his channel also, But he is doing a contest right now, and the contest is going for $100. If you want to enter into that contest, it's HTTP, and then I don't know what they call that symbol, //orbixmusic.com/contest/. So, and I'll try to put the link on here whenever Sammy gets up. Maybe she can help me out with it. She's kind of the tech savvy one. But I will be doing that shout out to that contest until the contest is over, on every video that I put out. And honestly, I've been putting out a video every day since I've been off grounding from YouTube. So there you go. And I wanted to start a new segment. Not that this is a slower episode, but I feel more relaxed. Some episodes I feel a little more relaxed and just kind of chill and just kind of go with the flow. I do have a subject for this episode, which I hope you will enjoy very much. But I wanted to start a new segment. And honestly, if you're a Christian or a Catholic and a fan, I hope I haven't discouraged you. I've always said every religion is welcome on this channel. Yes, it's Conspiracy Corner Podcast, but we delve into conspiracy theories, we delve into the paranormal, we delve into spirituality, which is something that I'm trying to get into more, I find it very difficult. I don't know if I have like a damaged frontal lobe or an underdeveloped frontal lobe. Whatever part of the brain controls spirituality, I think it's underdeveloped. But we have this book here, and I'm going to be selecting it at random for episodes that I'm just kind of more chill mode, It's called 365 Saints, and it's written by Wadeen Koenig Bricker. Your daily guide to the wisdom and wonder of their lives. So honestly, I'll do a little commercial for them. It's a spirituality book. Let the saints' lives guide and touch your life each day. And this is the description of it. The life of a saint is the life of an ordinary person lived well. And that's the life readers will discover in this delightful an often surprising collection of words and wisdoms from saints throughout the ages. A lovely and inspiring gift book. 365 Saints illuminates how the saints actually lived, detailing their hopes, fears, joys, and sorrows, as well as their lesser known idiosyncrasies and sayings, witty and wondrous, simple and sublime. 365 Saints offers a full year of meditations and practical suggestions for emulating the saints today. So here we go. What's today's date? Well, I don't know when you'll be hearing it, but this is the saint of today. And the lesson for today. Today's date is November 17th. So let me find November 17th. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to find some music for this segment. Some like monk stuff like, ooh. Kind of like how I have my breaking news segment with the breaking news music. All right. So today on November 17th, the saint today is Saint Elizabeth of Hungary. She was born in 1207 and she died on 1231. Many of the saints, both male and female, seem hardly to have been able to wait until their spouses died so they could get on with entering monasteries, founding religious orders, and doing saintly things. Saint Elizabeth of Hungary was not one of them. She was madly, passionately in love with her husband, Louis IV, the Landgrave of Thuringia. She would hold his hand at night while he slept, and when he died in the Crusades, she screamed and raved for days throughout the castle. There is no one way to be a saint. Many, like Francis of Assisi, espoused radical poverty and isolation as the surest road to heaven. Others, like Saint Elizabeth of Hungary, took a different approach. Instead of renouncing all the good things of the world, they reformed them. Saint Elizabeth, for instance, was always depleting the castle stores to give alms to the poor, but her husband, who loved her as much as she loved him, never seemed to mind. While it may be intriguing to read about saints who took their sanctity to extremes, most of us aren't interested in leaving everything and heading off to a monastery. Besides, there aren't many monasteries to join anymore. For most of us, holiness comes from living out our lives with the kind of lust for life that Saint Elizabeth of Hungary exhibited. We will find sanctity not amid sackcloth and ashes, but in the loving embrace of our spouse and the kisses of our children. Do I ever get the idea that holy is just another word for boring? I rejoice in life, love, and good times. Amen. All right. I hope you guys are still there. Apparently 13 minutes is like as far as people get into the podcast, which is funny because it's like, why are you tuning into a podcast if you're not going to listen to the whole thing? Everyone knows first 15 minutes is just intro stuff, you know? Because podcasts are usually people's second gig. But, all right, today's subject is the Winchester Mansion. And I don't know, this got first brought to my attention, honestly, through a coworker who was really big into the paranormal. And I've always been really big into the paranormal, but I never really used the internet a lot. Honestly, I was kind of a hillbilly for the longest time. I didn't really get into using the internet until probably 2013, 2014, as crazy as that sounds. and I'm almost 30 years old, but I never really needed it. I never seen a purpose of it. I mean, it was nice whenever I used it that other people had it, but I was always so poor and so broke that I never paid for it. Now I enjoy it, some parts of it, but I can live without it, honestly. But she had told me about this lady, the lady of the Winchester house, Miss Winchester, I believe. Um, but I don't know. It got popularized through the movie. And Sammy and me, as soon as I had heard the story, I fell in love with the story. And then come to find out, like, I think it was like 2 years ago they came out with a movie, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. And I don't get excited for movies much. The only movies that I really get excited and want to go see in theaters is like, that's when you know that I want to go see a movie. Is when I'm literally like, as soon as that comes out in theaters, I want to go to the theater and see it. I wanted to go see the latest Bill and Ted one, but COVID kicked in. Um, but Winchester was one that we seen in theaters. I was like, oh my God, I want to see that. I want to go to the movies and see that. And so I did. And it's usually the only movies that I really want to go to the movie theater and actually see are the ones that are really based off true stories. Like, I fell in love with the Conjuring series. And to me, I was like, this is based off a true story. Like, I want to go see it. But the story here is from Haunted Houses. It's written by Nancy Roberts. And the reason I like this story, yes, it is a fiction story, but it has like a nice introduction, which is historical, and the characters in the story are historical. But the reason I like this story is because, so don't automatically get discouraged and turn off the podcast, but the reason I like this story is because it's written in a fictional way, but it gives you a visual tour of the house. And it's like perfect for a podcast because it's in a written book form, but it gives you the visual tour of a house, of the Winchester house. So basically, if you're listening to me and you're at home, obviously you can't do this if you're listening in your car or you're listening at work. But if you're listening at home and you're actually just sitting down and enjoying the podcast, I would like you to close your eyes and kind of visualize the story. And that will kind of give you, with the description of the story, a tour of the Winchester Mansion. I hope you enjoy. A luxurious black carriage cruised slowly through one of Boston's old neighborhoods, along a once fashionable street lined with what were once grand houses. Now paint peeled from most of them, and soot from coal-burning furnaces gave the neighborhood a bedraggled look. The driver peered at the front of each building, trying to make out the numbers. He stopped before a dirty mustard-colored house with cream trim. Standing nervously on the porch, he turned and etched brass doorbell, which made jarring metallic sound. How strange to make a trip to this neighborhood just a day after the great man's funeral. Whatever could Mrs. Winchester and her niece expect to find here? He waited, but would anyone answer? Suddenly the knob turned and the door opened. The driver stepped back, startled. On the threshold stood a tall woman with deep-set olive-colored eyes. Her pasty face was shaped like a hatchet, and her black hair, pulled back severely, was wound in an immense twist on top of her head. She wore a long, somewhat shabby brown dress and an ancient shawl. The driver's usually impassive face must have reflected shock, for the woman looked at him harshly and then glanced at the fashionable carriage in front of the house. "She will have to come in, you know. Go tell her that Mrs. Raven is ready to see her." He went back to the brougham, opened the back door, and relayed the message, just as it had been given to him. A gloved hand emerged and rested upon his arm as he helped a tiny, heavily veiled woman in black from the carriage. She was followed by a younger lady wearing a hat with a soft veil wound about its brim. The driver, Charles Farnham, accompanied them in the front door, where the older woman made a sorry. This is why it's a podcast. I never said I was proper for a audiobook. Peremptory, Peremptory, peremptory motion for him to return to the carriage. When he looked back, the pair had disappeared into the house. Farnham was uneasy. It was not just that the expensive brougham was attracting attention in an unsavory neighborhood. It was the appearance of a woman who had opened the door. There was something evil about her. More than an hour passed, and his two passengers were still inside the house. He was tempted to go up and ring the bell to be certain that they were all right. But he didn't really care. Not yet. Restlessly, he pulled out a cigarette. What were they doing inside that house all this time? He watched a fine light drizzle of rain beginning to spatter the shiny black of the carriage. It was getting dark, but still the lights hadn't gone on inside. Why didn't the Raven woman light a lamp? He had almost gathered up his courage to check and see if Madame and her niece were all right when the front door opened. Miss Margaret came out first, and her aunt, Sarah Winchester, followed. Mrs. Winchester turned back toward the darkness of the doorway to speak to someone he assumed was Mrs. Raven. Since the death of William Wirt Winchester, son of Oliver Winchester, the Rifle King, Mrs. Winchester's sole companion had been Margaret. Yeah, so basically, this is the Winchester family. The family that created the rifle. So, I think this story gets into it, but if not, basically, Mrs. Winchester felt guilty for her late husband's legacy of creating the Winchester rifle, which was used in warfare against Native Americans. And yeah, you fuck with the Native Americans, you get ghost on you. I'm sorry. That's how it works. If you haven't figured that out from like every ghost story. This was the first of many trips Farnham was to make during the winter of 1884 from the Winchester Mansion at Hartford, Connecticut, to the shabby street in Boston. Sometimes Margaret would accompany her aunt. On other occasions, Sarah Pardee Winchester would go alone. She never seemed herself after a trip to the Witch's Palace, as Farnham had begun to call the mustard-colored house in his own mind. After the last visit, Mrs. Winchester appeared extremely frightened. She clutched Margaret's arms and talked hysterically. "Do you know what she says, Margaret? She says the money William left me has a curse on it." "Why would she say that?" "She says the spirits of all those men and women that were killed by the Winchester are haunting my fortune, and that they mean to harm me." "But there were lots of people killed by that rifle," Margaret protested reasonably. "Soldiers, Indians." "Oh, don't say the word Indians," according to Mrs. Raven. There will be the worst haunters, and there is just one way to keep them from forgetting me. And what way is that, Auntie? She said it can be done only by getting me a larger house that will attract good spirits. The good spirits will keep the evil ones away, and the house must be fixed up according to their wishes. But how will you know their wishes, Auntie? Mrs. Raven will guide me as to do what to do. Farnham, who was doing his best to hear the conversation, shook his head. People said her husband had left her $20 million. It was hard for him even to imagine how much money that was. But despite her wealth, he had begun to feel sorry for Mrs. Winchester. Poor woman, the death of her husband must have affected her mind. On their last trip to the house in Boston, just as they were about to get into the carriage, something huge and white flew past them, and Mrs. Winchester screamed. Farnham thought it could have been a large owl, startled by their lights. And he and Margaret tried to soothe Sarah Winchester. She almost collapsed in front of Mrs. Raven's house, and it took his and her niece combined efforts to get her into the back seat of the carriage. The next day, to everyone's surprise, Mrs. Winchester announced that she was moving to California. Farnham overheard her tell Mrs. Margaret that she believed the owl had been a warning to her that they must leave Hartford immediately. From now on, the spirits themselves will lead me of the staff given. The opportunity to move none accepted but Farnham, who was unmarried at the time. Once in San Jose, Sarah Winchester bought an 18-room house. There you go. This is where it starts. Her first move was to hire 22 carpenters to immediately commence adding a wing to the house. Landscape gardeners were the next to arrive, and they began to plant a towering towering hedge that shut off any view of the house from the road. Then 7 Japanese gardeners were hired to fertilize and prune the hedge so that no one could possibly see through it. Before they had left Hartford, Mrs. Winchester used to talk with Farnham occasionally. Now she never spoke to him or to any of the other servants. All instructions for everyone had to come through Mrs. Margaret, her niece, and secretary. The veil Mrs. Winchester put on for mourning was never removed except in the presence of the Chinese butler who served her dinner. Farnham began to find that he could scarcely remember Mrs. Winchester's features. Once, years later, Farnham asked Wan Lee what Mrs. Winchester looked like now. "She's little old lady," replied the butler, shrugging. "Look like shriveled plum." From the time of her arrival in San Jose house, carpenters and masons were at work 7 days a week. There seemed to be no hurry about completing many of the projects, and the workmen wondered why they were asked to be there on Sundays, holidays, and even Christmas Day. They had no idea of the warning a Boston spiritualist had given Mrs. Winchester. So basically, building the house keeps the ghost at ease because each room a ghost inhabits. And these are all the spirits that were basically suffered from the Winchester rifle. And when she stops building, the spirits come to get her. It's a crazy storyline, and it's an awesome movie, too. As long as hammers ring out day and night, nothing bad will ever happen to you. Only then will the good spirits keep the bad spirits away. and so the hammers continued to ring out. Sarah Winchester was holding seances alone now, in the seance room, sitting for hours with her pen posed to write down the spirit's instructions for her life. The message she believed was receiving through Mrs. Raven was that she must accomplish two tasks. The first was to keep out low and depraved spirits who would try their utmost to harm her. The second was to please the good spirits, whom she would one day join when she moved on to the next world. Both tasks were very expensive. The good spirits could be pleased only by the most lavish furnishings, and therefore every room had to be furnished like a royal palace. It was vital that none of the evil spirits should ever get into the small bare-walled seance room, which no living person but she could enter until after her death. If anyone did, they might contain a depraved spirit that could contaminate the room and prevent her from reaching heaven, quote unquote. Therefore, her way of getting to the seance room was a secret one through a labyrinth of passages and rooms, to elude the frustrated spirits and the evil spirits whom she believed sought to follow her. She spent hours planning. Once these tricks were completed, she could, for example, push a button that would make a wall panel recede, and she could step swiftly from one apartment to another. Then she could open a window and climb out, not onto a roof, but to the top of a flight of steps that would take her down one story to meet another flight that would bring her back up to the original level. The theory was that the maze of stairs would trick and confuse the spirits of the Indian ghost. In addition to the stairs that led nowhere, she had the carpenters build a huge room full of nothing but balconies. These balconies were of all sorts and sizes. Here the bewildered spirit might dash around a corner only to find that a balcony had suddenly shrunk from being 3 feet wide and was now only 3 inches. One balcony led to a door that, once closed, would not open from inside. Mrs. Winchester believed this would force the spirit to find another escape route. Of course, everything was only temporary. The way to delay for a few minutes the evil spirits that hurried after her. After at least half an hour of maneuvering to be certain that she had eluded her last ghostly pursuer, Mrs. Winchester would arrive at last in front of a piece of furniture resembling a large wardrobe with drawers in the bottom of it. But like almost everything else in Sarah Winchester's house, it was just another deception, for one door was not a wardrobe door at all. It really led into a seance room. Once through this door, she would emerge safely into the secret room on the other side of the wall, finally attaining her objective. The walls were painted blue, for it was widely believed among superstitious people that this color frightens away evil spirits. In the room was a cabinet, a comfortable armchair, and in front of the latter a table with a paper and a pencil for automatic writing, and a planchette board to receive the spirit messages. There are spots on the floor of this room where the varnish has been worn away by the constant tread of her slippers. Today there are few people left alive who remember Sarah Winchester, but one of those who does is Maria. Now an old woman herself, she still shivers about an experience she had as a girl when she worked in the Winchester house. It all started quite accidentally. Maria had been employed there for only a month and was hurrying to leave to prepare for a date that night with her young man. She took a wrong turn as she left the wing of the house in which she worked, and within minutes she was hopelessly lost in the labyrinth of connecting passages between, by then, almost 150 rooms. At one point, she was sure she was near one of the passages to the outside world. Instead, Maria found herself on a stairway with 7 separate flights. Breathless, she reached the door and managed to open it, only to find that the wall behind it was solid. Panic-stricken, she attempted to retrace her steps, but discovered she was on a sun porch that she had never seen, and it had a skylight in the floor. The next room she entered was also unfamiliar. She turned to go back out, only to realize that in a panic that the door to this room did not open from the inside. Finally, she found another way out. Her experience was assuming all qualities of a nightmare, except that it was real. She walked along a balcony and, seeing an open window, stepped through it, but in a moment she found that she was back on another part of the same balcony. But now she was hysterical. On she hurried up, one flight of steps, down another. Finally she opened a door and stumbled into a small windowless cell of a room. There, seated at a table, was a little old lady, glaring at her with an expression of an unspeakable rage. It was Mrs. Winchester. "You have disturbed the spirits!" she shouted. Maria had never really seen her employer, but she was always heavily veiled, and all the servants knew that no one was ever permitted to see her face. The combination of the forbidden sight and the anger she saw there caused the poor girl to faint. The ending of the story is told in Maria's own words. "When I woke up, I was laying on a bed in the servants' quarters, and within minutes was hustled out of the house and driven home. When I got out, the chauffeur gave me an envelope and told me I was never to come back to work again. In the envelope there was my notice from Mrs. Margaret and 6 months' salary. Even if I had not been fired, I could not have returned to that house. Are there ghosts and spirits in the Winchester house? I really don't know, but one thing I'm sure of is that the medium who said Mrs. Winchester's fortune was haunted by spirits that would harm her was evil. She took advantage of a woman's grief after the death of her husband and told her lies that destroyed her. For the rest of her life, all Mrs. Winchester's energy and money was spent on ways to protect herself from the strange imaginings. Mrs. Winchester was convinced by a spiritualist medium that the lives of her husband and baby daughter had been taken by the spirits of those killed by the gun that won the West. She, too, would share the fate unless she never stopped building a mansion for the spirits. She would live only as long as she continued to build. She built for almost 38 years the lavish 160-room mansion with 47 fireplaces, 13 bathrooms, and endless spiritualistic symbols, sprawls over 6 acres, and is California historical landmark, located at 525 South Winchester Boulevard in San Jose. The house is open daily for tours except on Christmas Day. For more information, telephone 408-247-2101. That's 408-247-2101. Thank you all. I hope you all have a good day, and thank you all for staying tuned for this episode of Conspiracy Corner Podcast. Check out the film and let me know in the comments what you guys think about the movie. It's an awesome movie, I tell you, man. It's an awesome movie. Me and Sammy had a good time, you know. Y'all have a good day. God bless.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.